This is Matt Jones with Concordia University in Irvine, and this is my oral presentation for the Ethics in Sport course. My quality of character that I've chosen to present on is self-discipline. A few opening thoughts. For me, self-discipline is really important just because I think it has a high degree of carryover to a lot of other characteristics. And I'll touch on all this stuff as we get into the PowerPoint, but self-discipline to me is really an underlying foundation for a lot of other characteristics, and so that's why I feel it's so important. Self-discipline was described to me as choosing between what you want now and what you want most, and I think that's really important, especially in today's world of instant gratification. You know, we got services like Amazon that'll have a package at your door, hours after you order it sometimes, and people don't learn to wait because of this. Now, a lot of things worth having in life require patience. And if you don't have self-discipline, it's impossible to have patience. You need to be disciplined enough to stay on task in order to achieve your goal. Self-discipline is a huge driver of success. The definition of self-discipline from the dictionary is the ability to control one's feelings and overcome one's weaknesses. It's the ability to pursue what one thinks is right despite temptations to abandon it, Self-discipline is fighting the idea fairy. You know what I mean? I think, a lot of people, they'll get these ideas or they'll get these goals and they'll set them, but then they get distracted by another goal or another idea or even just something that gets presented, For me as a strength and conditioning coach, people tell me all the time what they want to accomplish, but, they get distracted by, maybe going out, or they get distracted by maybe they change their goal or their approach or whatever, but in my field specifically, self-discipline is very important. You have to stay on track, Strength and conditioning is a process. In order to achieve a certain result, you have to follow the plan. That's, requires a great deal of self-discipline. So what does it mean to have self-discipline? It means you have the ability to motivate yourself, to stay motivated, and stay on track in order to accomplish whatever goal you set out to do, It means doing what's right over what's easy. A lot of times it's easy to skip practice or leave early or give half effort, but that's not necessarily the right thing to do. And you have to have the discipline to do what you need to do regardless of how you feel. An example that I give is, a player staying home on a Friday night because they got practice the next day, early morning, Friday night, especially with college athletes, their friends want to go out and party, or they want to go hang out or do whatever. And, the athlete has to be like, you know what, that sounds great, but I need to stay home because I got an early practice tomorrow. And it's what I need to do to make sure that I'm prepared for that practice. And it's not an easy thing to do, but it's definitely the right thing to do, in my opinion. The Bible talks a lot about having self-discipline. And one of the most powerful quotes in the Bible, I think, is from 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. And it says, "For the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline." So I interpret this as we all possess the ability to have self-discipline. It's something that we already have in us. We don't need to seek anything externally to get self-discipline. It's something that we have to practice regularly. It's a skill we must develop. Now, kind of switching gears here from the textbook. The textbook has a great section on self-discipline, and one of the quotes that really stood out to me, one of the ideas, I guess, that really stood out to me was that discipline should not have a negative connotation to the athlete. Discipline is simply focused attention and effort. I think a lot of the time, people look at discipline as a punishment, right? It's sacrifice. It's giving up things you enjoy for something else. And while that is true, I will admit that that shouldn't have a negative connotation. Discipline is not a punishment. Punishment is a punishment for maybe lack of discipline, lack of focused attention and effort, right? And that is a tool that coaches might have to use from time to time. But discipline itself is, as I mentioned, I'll keep saying, is a skill. It's something you should practice, and it's something that should be appreciated. If you have the ability to stay disciplined and stay on track, there's a reward at the end of the tunnel oftentimes. And so I don't think discipline should have a negative connotation. I think it should be looked at as a positive. Punishment is punishment. Discipline is not punishment. Athletes aren't the only one that need discipline. Coaches must be disciplined as well. If a coach wants his athletes to be disciplined, they must model that behavior for them. Players are more likely to respond to what they see as opposed to what they're told. Especially if the coach is saying one thing and doing another. You know what I mean? A player's not going to respect that. And as a coach, if you lose your players' respect, that's everything. Coaches have to practice what they preach. If a coach wants a disciplined team, they must be a disciplined coach. So why do athletes need discipline? I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory, but, for me, it comes down to commitment. When a player chooses to participate in a sport, they make a commitment to their team. And in the beginning, when motivation is high, the season just started, it's easy to be disciplined, right? It's easy to do the things that they're supposed to do, like going to practice, giving 100% effort. But as the season progresses, it's really easy to kind of lose that motivation. Maybe the season isn't going as well as you'd hoped. Maybe your body's just broken down, you're tired. That same fire is not quite burning as hot, and that's really where discipline comes into play for the athlete. If the athlete simply learns to go by feel when they're not feeling like it, maybe I won't do this today, or I can skip practice, like that sets a poor precedent for the rest of their life. And that's really where we as coaches have an opportunity to instill these values, in the athletes that we coach. It's staying disciplined regardless of what's going on, doing what you need to do regardless, because that will pay off in some way. Maybe not this season, maybe next season, maybe it's somewhere else in your life. But again, this is the time to hone that skill, and it all comes down to commitment. You made a commitment, you have to honor that commitment. And you made a commitment to give 100% effort day in and day out, regardless of how you feel. So that's why athletes need discipline. And I've already mentioned this, but self-discipline is a skill. It's something that must be practiced regularly. And it impacts other qualities of character. Specifically coming from the teaching character through sport textbook, some of the qualities listed was accountability, integrity, consistency, mental toughness, and pride. And I think those are all directly related to self-discipline. In order to be self-disciplined, there needs to be some sort of accountability. Can you hold yourself? Can you hold your teammates accountable, right? And as coaches, we need to hold the players accountable to be disciplined. And maybe, yes, that's kind of where punishments come in. If an athlete skips on a practice or skips on a commitment, maybe that's where we need to step in and teach them a little bit. But ultimately, it's creating that culture of accountability. Integrity, it's making the right choice, even though it might not necessarily be the easy one. You have to be disciplined in order to have integrity. Consistency takes discipline. You have to do what you need to do day in and day out. Mental toughness. When the going gets rough, you got to stay the course. And things will get rough no matter what you do. Pride. You have to take pride in your team. And it's underlying principle in self-discipline. If you take pride in your work, if you take pride in your character, you're going to have discipline to do what you need to do regardless of how you feel. I think achieving self-discipline, I talked about it being a skill. So achieving self-discipline is it's a process as well. You got to know your goal. What is it you're trying to accomplish? If you don't know what your goal is, how are you going to be disciplined? There needs to be a system of accountability. Who can you lean on to help you? Because, we all have moments of weakness. We're human, right? You have to have a system of accountability on yourself, maybe with your family, coaches, teammates. There needs to be a system in place to hold you accountable. Routine. The high achievers of the world, they all fall back on routines, right? Routines make it very easy to stay disciplined. Get rid of temptations. It's if you got a basketball player that needs to lose weight, don't have cookies in your house, man. Just get rid of those. I think lastly, right, make time to relax for yourself. We don't always need to be on edge going 24/7. Like take a time, take a deep breath, take a chill pill, as they say, right? It's much easier to stay disciplined when you don't have to do it all the time, when you have some time to unwind a little bit. The Dalai Lama said that a disciplined mind leads to happiness and undisciplined mind leads to suffering. discipline has such a negative connotation, but I know in my life and in a lot of my other athletes' life, the reason why people love sports so much is because it gives them something to do, right? When we're just left to our own devices, oftentimes that's when we get ourselves in trouble. And so I think there's really something to this quote. I think it's really powerful, in that when you are disciplined, when you are on task, when you are focused, it's much easier for you to be happy. And if you're undisciplined, just living a life of chaos, it's not a great existence. I think with discipline, it's important, something that I like to teach my athletes is that you're the driver of your own success, and, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, he says, all success begins with self-discipline. And that starts with you. And I firmly believe that. I firmly believe that it takes discipline to achieve anything in life. And if the athlete chooses to be undisciplined, they wrote their story. But the athletes who choose to stay disciplined, whether they achieve success in sport or not, they will achieve success through that skill. Maybe it's in other areas of life, but at the end of the day, that self-discipline that is developed through sport is the foundation. Just some wrap-up thoughts here. Discipline is the primary driver of success. If you're disciplined, you will probably be successful in something, right? Discipline is a skill. You got to practice it regularly. Regular practice of discipline will lead to mastery of discipline. We all have the ability for self-discipline within us. God gave us that ability. We have it within us. We just need to master it. Discipline requires other qualities of character, and other qualities of character rely on discipline as well. They all blend together. You can't have just one. Discipline is a process. Have a routine. Have some sort of accountability. And at the end of the day, discipline starts with you. It starts with a choice. As a coach, as an athlete, you have to make a choice to practice self-discipline. It's not something that happens to you. It's something that happens as a result of a choice that you make. And that's all I got. Thank you for listening to my presentation on self-discipline, and take care. God bless.